And we are live again. Good morning, Timothy.
Good morning, Maya. How are you?
Fine, how are you?
You're not underwater.
Not yet, although it was really very close to that with the typhoon last night.
Yes.
And I can see that you're not on your boat.
Unfortunately, not because of the typhoon. I had to come back home, tail between my legs. The whole 5-day plan we had plotted out to go to all of the islands just collapsed. So yes, I have to
Oh, well.
broadcast from my home office today.
Okay, so that's a good thing too. Let's go with the introduction and then turn on all the mics on Clubhouse too.
Okay, let me put on my dancing shoes.
Please do. Uh-oh. Can you hear the sound?
No, I don't hear that fabulous music. I can't dance.
Me either. Oh no. I have no idea what happened. We're going to watch the visuals only
Okay,
apart
well.
for this. Okay, so here we go, and let's go on Clubhouse too. Well, we are on Clubhouse. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear
Good
me,
morning.
Timothy? Good
Sure.
morning.
Are we live? Are we live on LinkedIn too?
Yes, we are. LinkedIn and
Okay.
YouTube and Clubhouse as well. So good
Okay. So we
morning.
just missed. Good morning. We missed the music for the Richard Berger intro, right?
We
Darn.
missed the music, right? But we didn't miss the visuals. The clip was going on, so everybody who is watching on YouTube probably will be happy to see it or was happy to see it. So it's time to start the briefing. Thank you very much
It's
for joining us.
it's always interesting. There's always an exciting day whenever we do our briefing, Maya. Just because we didn't have the music and I couldn't dance doesn't mean we're not going to have a great briefing today. So thank you very much for hosting this.
Thank you for being here. Well, a lot of things happened again. This is already a phrase I use every time we start the yes, we start the briefing. So we have a new cabinet. I wonder how many things are going to change with the cabinet. We don't know that. I hope that you're going to tell us a little bit about that. And of course, I believe that there are a lot of other things that have gone unnoticed thanks to other factors. Of course, this is the change of the cabinet. It has taken up the news. Also, it's the Obon week, and a lot of people, and I guess, a lot of media as well, are taking a break. So without any further ado, I'll give you the floor. And if you need any help on the way, technical help, please let me know and get ready for the questions too. So here we go. Haha, yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Maya. Today is August 14th, as everybody knows. We are in the tail end of Obon. Obon is a very special day. It's a time when the spirits of the dead revisit Earth. It is also a time when, in Japanese history, two bombs were dropped during World War II 70 years ago. And the end of the war, which was proclaimed by the emperor for the first time, the Japanese people could hear his voice, is on Monday. So tomorrow is the end of war day. It's not really celebrated. It's not a national holiday, but it is a time of deep reflection, and it's very important. So I think most companies still take the day off. We're still in Obon. And you will have noticed that there was one minister of the new cabinet who visited Yasukuni on Saturday, just yesterday. This is a pretty big deal for the government to be involved in this separation of church and state. Yasukuni is a kind of embodiment of the church portion of that. And we have this issue with the unification church that is blowing up and led basically to the reshuffle of the cabinet on an earlier timetable than is normal. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that. But also, a lot is going on during this time of the year. We had a typhoon that came in and swept through the country. actually touched land just north of Osaka, carried through Kanto, and I believe is out to sea now. But it really did put a hamper on the 3 days or 4 days, 5 day vacation that people had planned during this really peak summertime. So it's unfortunate I have to broadcast from my home office because the typhoon made sailing just impossible. But I was intending to be out with Captain Evan Burkowski out to the islands of the Izu island chain, but that was damaged too. But we still move on. Also, it's important to note that in 1985 there was a crash of a JAL super, Boeing airliner in Guma, on one of the mountains of Guma. 520 people perished in that. It was a huge accident for Japan. These kinds of things very rarely happen. In fact, the fellow who hired me, the member of the upper house who hired me out of Japanese law school in 1982, was scheduled to be on that flight, and just because of a scheduling, he couldn't make that flight. He didn't make it, and as a consequence, he survived, and 2 years later became foreign minister. So it's a pretty big deal, for something like that to happen. And as a consequence, the aviation industry went through a huge change here, and we haven't had too many incidents like that since then. So Monday will be the close of Obon. It is also a day of high reflection. So just keep that in mind as you're out and about in town, especially if you are in downtown Tokyo or near the Yasukuni Shrine. There are a lot of activities that are going on there. So just be careful with that. The biggest thing that's happened since we last met Sunday ago is the Kishida cabinet reshuffle. This happened just a little bit earlier than projected, not here on this show. We anticipated that it was going to be soon after the closing of the Diet. The Diet closed their extraordinary session Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of a week ago, and then maybe 4 days later, Mr. Kishida reshuffled his cabinet. It's interesting that he chose this time. Typically, his approval ratings in the recent past have been rather high, and that's because of his response to COVID, his response to addressing inflation, and his policies on moving the economy forward. He reshuffled the cabinet in the hopes of supporting, strengthening his trajectory. It didn't quite work for him for a number of reasons. Similarly, for the reasons that supported his projection upward, these are the reasons for his projection downward. Inflation continues to hamper the economy, and it pushes prices up. There has been no sign of wage increases, although he talks a lot about the new capitalism and how that's going to be impacted. And I think we can look forward to that moving forward now that the cabinet reshuffle is behind us. But there are still other things on the horizon that will take a lot of his attention. The other issue is that's hampering him is the state funeral for the slain former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, which is scheduled for September 27th or 28th. It's a pretty big deal. I don't think that even in light of the opposition, they've done polls. There's a poll out just yesterday on Yomiuri on a wide range of issues, including the cabinet reshuffle, including the anticipation of this administration, but also on the population's appetite for the state funeral for Shinzo Abe. And it looks like there is a high percentage, almost 50% of the Japanese population is opposed to a state funeral. It's going to happen anyway. I think they're going to still follow through with that and just take the hits. It's too hard. It would be too distasteful to back down from that. It would also show a bit of weakness from this prime minister and his new cabinet. He's got to be very careful in projecting strength and unity. And those are the two key words that kind of glue this his selections for his entire cabinet together. So there could have been a couple of ways he went with his cabinet selection. One is, let's get the economy going. Let's focus on that. Let's focus on the COVID response. Instead, I think what can be said about the cabinet reshuffle is a drive to unify the political factions together. We had anticipated that this was a good time, a prime time, since the largest faction within the LDP, the Abe faction, is suffering from a bit of a crisis of leadership, that he would be diminishing that that faction and bolstering perhaps his own or some of the ones that are closest to him. In fact, he didn't quite do that. He spread out the cabinet appointments a little bit more fairly and in a way to kind of keep the balance. So he's trying to keep unity. He kept some of the key players in their own positions, but some of the other cabinet portfolios, the important ones, he distributed and kept this kind of balance with the Abe administration or the Abe faction a little bit backstepped, but not in a way that would diminish them, so viscerally. So we have done a bunch of analysis on that. There is all of the newspapers are reporting their own different take on it. We actually did a video on it, a webinar on Friday. I think it was Friday night. No, it wasn't Friday. It was Wednesday night. With Dan Harada. Dan Harada is a well-known fixture in Japanese LDP politics. He is a nationalized Frenchman. He's been in Japan for many, many years. I've known him for 40 years. And he is a member of the LDP and speaks pretty expansively on what's going on within the LDP. That's his area of expertise. He joined Langley Esquire. Kelly Langley hosted him as an interviewer. And Maya, I think you can post that up for people to look at that. It was about a 30-minute interview on what's going on. Why is this cabinet being changed like this? What's the timing, the individuals? And I urge you to take a look at that if you're really interested in it. Maya?
Yes, it is already there. So it's on top of the screen on Clubhouse. Please go there, click on the link and watch it later. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So in this recent Yomiuri poll, the cabinet approval and the approval of the prime minister fell actually about 6 points as a consequence of, I think, the cabinet reshuffle. I think people's expectations were a little bit higher, and based on the selection of individuals that the prime minister chose, his cabinet approval took a bit of a hit. It's because of the state funeral, the support of the state funeral. It's also because of the COVID reaction. Also, this unification church controversy that has just exploded as a consequence of the assassination of Shinzo Abe, and also this incessant inflation that is just keep on, hurting the economy, dampening down expectations, and really having a huge impact. The Japanese love polls. I think they are very accurate at polling. The Japanese politicians follow it. It does indicate policy changes because the politicians are reactive to that. But in terms of how this particular reshuffle was viewed, it wasn't too bad. He's still standing at 51%. In comparison with other cabinet reshuffles, and there have been a lot, the percentage for this particular one is not that damaging. It is still above 50%. The average cabinet approval ratings were 56%, while Junichi Koizumi was prime minister, 47% when Shinzo Abe first held his office, 38% for Yasuo Fukuda, 26% for Taro Aso, 53% during the period when Abe returned to office, and 48% for Yoshida Suga. So you can see that it's really kind of on the top end. Of the appointments, some of the questions were directed at individuals, and Konotaro as a digital minister received a 63% approval rating. So people said they liked that, but that was balanced by 21% that said, we don't like him. He's not our kind of guy. But I think actually the appointment of Konotara as digital minister was pretty brilliant. Mr. Hagiura, as chairman of the LDP's Policy Research Council, received a 32% approval rating, and 40% said that they do not support that. So there's a little bit of tension there. And for the downward trend of the Kishida administration, people said that 35% of the respondents chose the LDP, which was down from 38% in the previous poll. So there is a trend going down. The LDP seems to be receiving a couple of hits, and it's probably because of Unification Church, and it's probably because of the state funeral for Shinzo Abe. So of the 17 cabinet reshuffles since the first Koizumi cabinet, the approval ratings fell immediately after the cabinet reshuffle on 3 occasions. It remained unchanged twice, and it rose on 12 occasions. So this tells you in context that typically a cabinet reshuffle is going to enhance a prime minister's standing. Most of the time it does. On a couple of occasions, it just stayed the same. And in very few did it fall. So this is one of the instances where actually the cabinet approval rating fell. So the prime minister is in a bit of a bind. He really needs to pull his team together. And I think he's taken that hit in the knowledge that although it doesn't reach a high percentage of public support, within the party, within the LDP, his position is strengthened. So even in this poll, people said, the question was, do you want to see the Kishida administration continue? Do you want to see it to stop in his term of office now? Do you want him to resign right away? There was a bit of a mix, and unfortunately, kind of a lot of people said, he's good for the first term, but we don't want to see it continue on. So he's got a lot of building up to do. I think one of the things that most people can say about Mr. Kishida is he's got lots of ideas, he promotes a lot, but he really doesn't do anything, particularly with the COVID reaction. So you might understand that with COVID, we are really in deep water here. The COVID numbers now, cumulatively, are 15 million cases. There was about 240,000 cases a day throughout the entire nation due to the BA.5 variant. So since July 14th, July 14th, there was 10 million cumulative. Right now, there are 15 million cumulative. This is really an astounding number. The trajectory is huge. And I think the public perception is that Mr. Kishida is not doing much to address it. In fact, he is on purpose doing his own thing, but I think what he's done is he's taken COVID off the front burner and put the economy on the front burner. So a lot of the policies, a lot of the restrictions, a lot of the medical instructions to hospitals, ambulance service, first responders, and to the general population has been, it's just the flu, we'll get through this, we've got new vaccines coming. And on that particular issue, there is, unfortunately, another wave that is expected in the fall. It is going to be different from the BA.5 variant. They have already begun tests and rollouts for a vaccination, which is a bivalent vaccination, which deals with BA.5 plus what they anticipate to be this new variant. A lot of the inoculations that people have received, some of them 60 years and older, have received 4 inoculations. There will be another inoculation coming out in September or October, depending on when Pfizer and Moderna can produce it and get it into Japan. But the Japanese government, the Kishida administration, has said this will be available to everybody who has received at least 2 booster shots. So there's a certain qualification there, to 60 people in the high incident category, which is 60 years and older, and to first responders. That is projected to be out in mid-October. So keep your eye out for that, and there will be a lot of heat and a lot of news coming out on, even the economy is beginning to suffer as a consequence of this. Consumer sentiment and the projections for near-term decline of consumer spending is already on the boards. There are a couple of bellwether marks for that. Typically, the number of people who are using taxis decreases two months before the economy really begins to show that, and we're already suffering from that now from the taxi companies and the receipts. The government is following that very closely. The inflation is beginning to peak. The Japanese government under Kishida has announced that flour prices will remain the same. So it's the same thing with gasoline taxes, gasoline prices. They have set a trigger price there that the cost won't go beyond what they've already established. The same is going to be true with flour. They just announced that, I believe, on Friday. So that's a pretty big deal. A lot of flour is consumed in Japan. It's almost all coming from overseas, paid in US dollar terms. So because of the inflation and the yen dollar valuations, the Japanese are paying more for that. So there will be price supports for that. But this is a long-term thing. It looks like it's going to continue on throughout the winter and into the spring. So this new administration is really going to be fraught with a lot of difficulties. And in the meantime, like I said, there are other things that are coming down the path. One of the things that the prime minister has got to deal with, he's dealing with it on a daily basis, is this tie between the Unification Church and LDP politicians. And it turns out that of the LDP politicians, the Abe faction was one of the largest promoters of the Unification Church. So the Unification Church is its policies somewhat mimic. They're very conservative in their approach for the buildup of the military, for same-sex marriages, for a lot of things that the LDP traditionally stands for. The Unification Church also staunchly supports. But this relationship between politics and religion, specifically the Unification Church, has been going on for a long time. And it was as a consequence of this assassination where it's now come out in the open, and it is just insidious. So even though the prime minister selected his 19 members of the new cabinet, about 10 of them still have Unification Church ties, even though he said, without being too strict about it, please check your records, make sure that you don't have any relations with the Unification Church. Many people in this poll, the Yomiuri poll, said he should have been a little bit more stringent in that. He should have actually had some bellwether tests applied to the people that he put in the cabinet, because even though it's a big issue, he knows it's a big issue, still 10 of them have some form of a relationship, meaning that they've received money from them, they've spoken at their rallies, or they've had volunteers that have helped them with their election campaign. So this is a pretty big issue. Of the 712 members of the upper house and the lower house that we have in the Japanese parliament, more than 100 have pretty solid ties to the Unification Church. It's somewhat, I don't know, it's a funny observation, this big deal about the Unification Church and affiliation with the Unification Church. We still have church and state, I don't know what you would say, integration at several levels. The Komeito is it could be said is the political arm of the Church of Japan, not the Church of Japan, but one of the churches, so that one received a kind of a pass, and it looks like nobody else receives a pass. I think it's kind of like Komeito has a relationship that is detached, but it's kind of like other people trying to mimic that and build up their own political foundation, like Komeito was able to achieve, receive a little bit more scrutiny and a little bit more disdain. But it really remains to be seen what is going to happen with that. But I think the fact that the Unification Church also received, condolences on the anniversary of the death of the founder of the Unification Church from the North Korean organization just recently. also begins to taint it a little bit. It's kind of one of those things, it's a flavor of the month. We don't want to be affiliated with the Unification Church. So I think this will go on for a little bit, but it will die down. The opposition party will make hay with this. So they will have a diet session that will be initiated probably in October, right around the time after the state funeral for the prime minister. And the opposition party is already sharpening their knives, saying we are going to really lambast the LDP, because I think many of the opposition parties didn't benefit from that kind of relationship. So there's that. Moving on, Okinawa, I've predicted will be in the news. Now that we have the cabinet reshuffle, it's in the news. The campaigning for the governor of Okinawa will begin, let me see, the 25th of this month. It will end on the 11th of September for an election for the 4-year term of governor. Currently, that position is held by Denny Tamaki. He's fighting for his second term. And Okinawa has always been a little bit of a problem child, a problem prefecture for the LDP. Denny Tamaki used to belong to the LDP and gave up his seat in the lower house and ran for governor 4 years ago. And he wants to repeat this. He's got two contenders, one a former mayor of the city of Ginowan, one of the largest cities in Okinawa, and then a former lower house member who is from Okinawa, who has decided that he wants to become governor too. This is his second race for that. And this will be a very tightly contested race. It will be in the news a lot. They're already building up their forces there to see who will be governor. Okinawa, as you might know, is the poorest prefecture of all 47 prefectures for a lot of complicated reasons. It also has the highest life expectancy in Japan, and it also has the highest number of births. So Okinawa is unique in a lot of different reasons. It's unfortunate that it has this tension between the central government and Okinawa. The LDP wants to really dominate Okinawa, and as a consequence of not having that ability to really call the shots on where the U.S. military is going to be basing its forces there, that is one of the hottest issues there. The Futema relocation of the Marine base to Henoko, the building of the Henoko port, that sort of thing is just a huge issue. The central government, the LDP, would like to be in fuller control of that. And because of the opposition from the governor and from the Okinawan people in general, things are held back. Government funds are held back. Okinawa, you would think, would be the sparkling gem of Okinawan of Japanese development, as a resort, as a place to have a university, that sort of thing. And it's rather sad that it's not allowed to do that for many reasons, some of them artificial. So expect a lot of news there. I think it's going to be a hotly contested race. Denny Tamaki has, I think, the upper hand, but it will be tight and contested. So keep your eye on that, because it is the staging point for almost all U.S. forces. About 85-90% of all U.S. forces, all facilities are based in Okinawa, and it is the point of the spear should anything happen in this region with regard to Taiwan and Korea, China. So it's a real flashpoint. The other kind of interesting thing that has happened, we are in the middle of Obon. The cabinet reshuffle was just a couple of days ago. Members of the parliament are all scattered throughout the country, going back to their election districts to kiss babies and to shake hands and to reassemble with their supporters. Very few people are here in Tokyo and are not expected to be back in Tokyo until sometime in September. It doesn't mean at the beginning of September, when school starts, they come back. There's a large break here before the diet comes back. So probably around the time mid-September, late September, the state funeral would be a very big deal. It looks like former President Obama will join the state funeral. There will be leaders from all over the world, prominent people, individuals who will be coming to Japan. The hotels will be booked. The tourist agencies will be booked. The limousine companies will be really busy, but that's towards the end of September. Once that is behind us, then I think politics will get back into full swing. At the same time, the prime minister wanted to have this cabinet reshuffle now, so that in the interim, these new cabinet ministers, and there are about 9 of them that are brand new cabinet ministers, have time to get boned up, get trained by the bureaucrats on what their role is, what they're supposed to be doing, how they integrate together under a Kishida administration, under his leadership. So there's a lot of background work going on there. Not everybody is back to their election districts, and I think probably you can say that the cabinet is fully ensconced. There are a couple of other things going on in Japan that have deep policy implications. One of them is the report on population declines. I wanted to report that to you because it's really huge. First of all, the number of babies that are being born, and also the general population has shrunk. It's shrunk for several years in a row, but this last decline is rather large, 0.5%, a decline in the total population. And the number of foreigners coming into Japan is 3 times that. So that's more of a population that is more flexible in terms of staying here, not coming here, not being able to replace the people who are leaving here. But the number of foreigners in Japan has also declined remarkably, not just because of COVID, because of the economy, and for a lot of other reasons. And the general population has declined consecutively since 1975. The other thing that this has done in terms of COVID is the number of weddings. And Maya, you spend a lot of time in Marunouchi, and I'm sure towards the end of the day, you've been aware of the number of people who are on the promenade there getting their pictures taken in their wedding gowns. Have you ever noticed that?
Oh yes, they are beautiful there. Yes, taking
It's
the pictures and everything.
Yeah, every day, like at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, until the sun sets, you can go by there and you will see 20 people, 20 couples getting their pictures taken at sunset with the backdrop of the Tokyo station with the moats in the background, that sort of thing.
Yes, that's
It's a
beautiful. Every
It
day.
really is. Yes, it's a really interesting phenomena of how you get married if you're in Tokyo, right? If you're going to get married and you live in Tokyo, you're going to hire a photographer, and that's the place you get your photos taken. But
Definitely.
the reality is the number of marriages throughout Japan has plummeted, and this is like the first sign of you're not going to have babies, you're not going to be selling houses, you're not going to be selling washing machines, all this white what do you call it, the white gear, refrigerators, stoves, coolers, that sort of thing. So the economy is poised to take this decline here. The Japanese government really needs to anticipate that. Many people are afraid that they're not watching the ball right now. They're focused on other things. But these attributes, these characteristics are unmistakable, and they're kind of long term. They get started, they build up momentum, and pretty soon you have the outgrowth of what's going to happen policy wise there. So the number of marriages, the number of births in decline, the number of housing starts. There is this other phenomenon with the akiya, the number of houses that are unoccupied throughout Japan. There are millions of those, and there's no clear policy on how to utilize them, how to regenerate them, with the number of people who are willing to take them over, to take all the trash out, to distribute the trash, divide the trash into burnable, non-burnable, also the valuables, and those sort of family heirlooms. It's just a huge issue that is impacting a lot of the overall economy here. So there's a lot going on. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who listen to this briefing, we always continue with a question and answer period afterwards. But for the physical briefing here, we try and keep it to about 30 minutes. And if you're interested in more depth and more analysis and other people's opinions, please join us on the Clubhouse side. But this virtual streaming, we only do for the briefing, and I don't think we have the capability to do Q&A here. Isn't that right, Maya?
We don't have it, not yet. So hopefully the technology will allow us to do it later in time.
Okay.
We'll see. Yes.
But anyway, Maya, that's essentially the briefing for today. There's a lot going on. I hope I was able to touch on some of them. What's going on in the Kishida administration? What's going on in Mr. Kishida's mind with regard to the economy? Please check out the Dan Harada interview for more insight there. And every week, let's get together to talk about what's going on in Japanese politics, Maya.
Thank you, Timothy. Definitely, yes. And so now we move to Clubhouse to continue with the questions and answer session, as you said.
Definitely. Next week, I will be on the deck of the boat for my briefing because I'm going out there no matter what.
I cannot wait for that, to see you there on the
Thank
boat, rocking. Yes. Okay, so see you on the other side then.
Okay, see you on the Clubhouse side. Thank you, everybody, for listening.